The sold-out crowd at the summit in Houston was on their feet, screaming Prince's name as he launched into the final verse of Purple Rain. On March 8th, 1985, 18,000 people filled the massive arena, their voices joining his in a chorus that seemed to shake the very foundation of the building. Prince stood at center stage in his iconic purple jacket and ruffled shirt, his custom-built purple guitar catching the spotlight as his fingers moved effortlessly across the strings. But tonight, as Prince held the final note of the second verse, his voice soaring over the arena in that distinctive falsetto that had become his trademark, something impossible happened. A harmony joined his voice from somewhere in the massive crowd, a perfect, achingly beautiful harmony that shouldn't have been possible. It wasn't coming from his band, The Revolution, who stood frozen behind him, equally confused. It wasn't coming from the sound system or the backup singers. This voice was raw, untrained, and impossibly pure, weaving through his melody like it had been designed specifically for this moment. Prince's eyes snapped open behind his sunglasses. The harmony was coming from section 214, high up in the nosebleed seats, and it carried an emotion that cut through all the spectacle and showmanship of his performance. More importantly, this voice knew harmonies to Purple Rain that Prince had never taught anyone. Harmonies that existed only in the original demo recording he'd made years ago in his home studio. A recording that had never been released to the public. The voice knew every breath, every pause, every subtle inflection. Because whoever was singing had heard that demo, had been there when he created it. The audience sensed something had shifted. The energy in the arena changed from celebration to confusion, then to a kind of breathless anticipation as everyone realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Prince stopped singing entirely and just stood there, frozen at center stage, his guitar still playing, while that voice continued alone, filling the arena with a sound so heartbreakingly beautiful it brought tears to thousands of eyes. Prince raised his hand, a gesture everyone in his organization understood. Stand down. The arena fell into complete silence, except for that one voice, now carrying the melody by itself. 18,000 people held their breath, transfixed by the raw emotion pouring from the upper deck. The voice sang the final chorus with such vulnerability and longing that it felt less like a performance and more like a confession, a prayer, a plea that had been held inside for far too long. When the song ended, the silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then Prince did something he'd never done in his entire career. He set down his guitar, walked to the edge of the stage, and spoke directly to the crowd in that soft, almost shy voice that contrasted so dramatically with his larger-than-life persona. Section 214. Please, come down here. The crowd erupted into confused chatter. But Prince just stood there, waiting, his entire body tense with an emotion that no one in that arena could quite identify. Was it anger, fear, hope? Maybe all three at once. When she finally emerged at floor level, the spotlight caught her in a beam of white light. She appeared to be in her early 30s, wearing jeans and a simple purple t-shirt. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and even from a distance, you could see her hands were shaking. She wasn't a groupie. She wasn't a superfan trying to get attention. There was something genuine in her hesitation, something real in the way she looked up at Prince on that stage like she was seeing a ghost. Security parted to let her through, and she walked slowly toward the stage. Prince knelt down at the edge, bringing himself to her level. For a moment, they just looked at each other, and the 18,000 people in that arena might as well have disappeared. The way Prince's face changed, the way his carefully constructed stage persona crumbled to reveal something raw and vulnerable underneath, made it clear that this wasn't part of any show. This was real. This was personal. When Prince finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but his microphone picked it up and carried it through the arena. One word. Just one word that sent shockwaves through everyone who had known Prince in the early days. Maya? The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. Prince helped Maya onto the stage, and the two of them stood there in front of 18,000 witnesses, having a conversation that felt impossibly intimate despite the massive audience. Prince's band had quietly left the stage, sensing that this moment belonged to these two people alone. "I can't believe you're here," Prince said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't believe you're really here." Maya smiled through her tears. "I've been to 17 of your concerts over the past 3 years. I always sat in the back, always left before the encore. Tonight, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I heard Purple Rain, and I remembered that night in your mother's basement when we created it together. And I couldn't not sing." "Why did you leave?" Prince's question hung in the air. The pain in his voice was palpable. Maya took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her words were directed not just at Prince, but at the entire arena, as if she needed witnesses to this confession. "We met at a talent show, started making music together in your mother's basement. Every day after school we'd create. You'd play piano, I'd sing, and somehow our voices just fit. We were building something special." "So why did you leave?" Prince asked again, softer this time. "Because I loved you too much to hold you back," Maya said, and the arena went completely silent. "Your talent was too big for Minneapolis. Your vision was too expansive to be contained by anything or anyone. You were 22, you just signed with Warner Brothers. They wanted you to tour, to record, to become a star. But you kept talking about how we'd do it together, how you'd bring me along, how we'd be a duo. We would have been amazing together," Prince protested. "Maybe," Maya acknowledged. "Or maybe I would have been the thing that kept you from becoming Prince. The real Prince. The artist who changed music forever. I couldn't take that risk. So I left Minneapolis. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I changed my number. I disappeared completely because I knew if I stayed, you'd keep trying to make me part of your journey." The tears were flowing freely down both their faces now. Prince took Maya's hands in his. "You didn't destroy your dream. You are my dream. Everything I've done, every song I've written, every stage I've stood on, it's all been trying to recapture what we had in that basement. That purity, that connection, that feeling that music could save us both." The audience was crying now. This wasn't just about Prince and Maya anymore. It was about every choice we make, every person we let go, every dream we sacrifice for someone else's future. "I need to tell you something," Prince said, his voice taking on a new intensity. "I never recorded with anyone else the way I recorded with you. Not the Revolution, not any of the incredible musicians I've worked with over the years. Because no one understood my music the way you did. No one could hear what I was trying to create before I even created it. You were inside my head, Maya. And for 15 years, I've been trying to fill that hole." Maya was sobbing now, and the emotion in the arena was overwhelming. Then Prince did something unexpected. He walked over to where his band had left their instruments, picked up an acoustic guitar. "I wrote this song 6 months after you left," he said. "I've never performed it in public. I've never even recorded it properly. It's just been living in my notebook all these years." He began to play, and the melody that emerged was unlike anything Prince had ever released. It was simpler, more vulnerable, stripped of all the production and funk that had become his trademark. It was just a man and a guitar and a broken heart trying to make sense of abandonment. The lyrics told the story of two people in a basement, making music and falling in love with the sound they created together. It told the story of a phone call that never came. It told the story of searching for someone's face in every crowd, hearing their voice in every harmony, feeling their absence in every song. When the song ended, the silence in the arena was absolute. Then Maya spoke, and what she said next would become one of the most talked about moments in music history. "Prince," she said, her voice trembling, "I need to tell you why I really came back, why I couldn't stay in the shadows anymore." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her hands were shaking as she unfolded it and held it up so Prince could see. It was a medical document, and even from a distance, even in the stage lights, Prince could see the words at the top: diagnosis. The entire arena seemed to hold its breath. "6 months ago, I found out I'm sick," Maya said, her voice steady despite the tears. "Really sick. The kind of sick that makes you realize you're running out of time to fix your mistakes. And the biggest mistake of my life was walking away from you. Not because I loved you romantically. I don't think that's what we were ever supposed to be. But because I walked away from the music, from the magic we made together, from the only time in my life I felt completely, perfectly understood." Prince was staring at her, and the devastation on his face was clear. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty or sad," Maya continued quickly. "I'm telling you because I want you to know that your music has kept me alive. Literally, every album you've released, every song you've written, every performance I've watched from the back of the arena, it's been my connection to that basement. To that time when we were young and fearless and believed that music could change the world. Your success didn't happen because I left. Your success happened because you're a genius. And I need you to stop carrying guilt about my choice." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was stronger. "But I also need you to know that the magic we created together, it wasn't just in your head. It was real. And it's still here. I can still hear the harmonies. I can still feel the music between us. And I came here tonight because I need you to know that before I don't get to tell you anymore." The arena was destroyed. 18,000 people were openly weeping. Even the security guards had tears streaming down their faces. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was witnessing someone's life unfold in real time, with all its beauty and tragedy and impossible choices laid bare for everyone to see. Prince stood there, and for a long moment, he didn't move. Then he turned to face the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice clear and strong, "I want you to understand something. This woman, Maya Torres, is the reason I learned to be vulnerable in my music. She's the reason I learned that strength and sensitivity aren't opposites. They're partners. She's the reason I understood that music could be more than entertainment. It could be salvation." He turned back to Maya. "You didn't hold me back. You launched me forward. And you're not leaving my life again. I don't care if we have 6 months or 6 years or 6 decades. We're making music together. We're finishing what we started in that basement. And we're going to create something so beautiful that everyone will understand why some connections are worth waiting 15 years to reclaim." Maya nodded, unable to speak through her tears. "Tonight," Prince said to the crowd, "we're going to do something that's never been done before. Maya and I are going to perform together for the first time in 15 years. And you're all going to be part of it. They performed together for 90 minutes, their voices blending in harmonies that seemed to transcend the physical space of the arena. They sang Purple Rain again, but this time as a duet, and it sounded like a completely different song, more complete, more whole. They performed The Beautiful Ones, and it became a conversation about beauty and sacrifice. They sang When Doves Cry, and it transformed into a meditation on loneliness and the search for connection. The audience felt like they were witnessing something sacred. As the night wound down, Prince made one final announcement. "Maya," he said, taking her hands one more time, "I want to ask you something, and I want to ask it in front of all these witnesses so you can't say no." The crowd held its breath. "Will you come to Paisley Park? Will you come to my studio and help me make an album? Not as a session singer, not as a guest artist, as my full collaborator, the way we were always supposed to work together. Let's make the music we talked about making in that basement. Let's finish what we started, however much time we have. Let's use it to create something that matters." Maya's smile was radiant despite her tears. "I've been waiting 15 years for you to ask me that question," she said. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The arena exploded. 18,000 people were on their feet, screaming and crying and celebrating this real-life story of redemption and second chances. Prince and Maya embraced on stage, and in that moment, they weren't rock stars or fans or strangers. They were just two people who had found their way back to each other after being lost for far too long. The story became international news. Rolling Stone called it the most emotionally powerful concert moment in modern music history. But more importantly, the story resonated with millions of people who saw themselves in that narrative, people who had walked away from something important, people who wondered if it was ever too late for second chances. Prince and Maya did go to Paisley Park. They spent the next 8 months creating an album together that Prince would later say was the most honest music he'd ever made. The album, titled Basement Tapes, was a return to the stripped-down, emotionally raw sound they'd developed together as teenagers. It featured just voice, piano, and guitar. No production tricks, no funk innovations. Just two people making music together the way they'd always been meant to. The album was released in November 1985, and while it didn't achieve the commercial success of Purple Rain, it won critical acclaim for its vulnerability and emotional depth. More importantly, it gave Prince and Maya the closure they both needed. They'd finished what they'd started. They'd proven that the magic between them was real and lasting and worth all the years of separation. Maya Torres passed away in March 1986, surrounded by friends and family, with Prince at her bedside holding her hand. Her final words to him were simple. "Thank you for letting me be part of your music one more time." At her funeral, Prince performed the song he'd written for her, the one he'd played for the first time in Houston. And there wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. He never performed that song again in public. It remained his private tribute to the woman who had taught him that vulnerability was strength, and that the best music comes from the deepest truth. The bootleg recording of that night in Houston became legendary among Prince fans. Not just for the music, but for the story it told. A story about the choices we make and the people we lose and the rare, precious moments when we get a chance to make things right. It reminded everyone who heard it that it's never too late for reconciliation, that true connection transcends time and distance, and that sometimes the most important performances happen when we drop all pretense and just allow ourselves to be seen. Years later, Prince would say that the night Maya walked back into his life was the moment he understood what his music was really for. "I'd been trying to be mysterious and enigmatic and untouchable," he said in a rare interview. "But that night taught me that the real power of music is in its ability to connect us, to remind us that we're not alone, to give us the courage to be vulnerable with each other before it's too late." The woman who appeared from the crowd wasn't really a stranger at all. She was the answer to every lonely melody Prince had ever written, every harmony he'd searched for but couldn't quite find, every moment he'd felt incomplete despite all his success and fame. She was proof that some connections are so profound they can survive 15 years of silence. If this story of music, loss, and redemption moved you, remember that it's never too late to reconnect with the people who matter. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is step out of the shadows and let ourselves be seen. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is the truth about how much they mattered to us, even if years have passed. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, the universe gives us a second chance to finish what we started, to create the harmony we were always meant to sing together.